Welcome to the cellblock Scorch, 217A. It's me, Octo. This is the first time I get to record my actual Scorch, so that's exciting. The prompt for this week was given by Styx, who you heard from last Saturday. And her prompt was, that's code for do not eat. This week's winner was me, which is why you get to hear me. And we're just gonna jump into this one, and I'll try to explain after. If you're confused, don't panic. This is kind of a world-building moment. So this piece is called Dinner Party. Nevev hated dinner parties. She hated them with the depth of Hexteria's greatest ocean, which was extremely deep, by the way, in case anyone cared. It was apparent that Captain Saren certainly didn't, else he wouldn't have dragged them all to this toth-forsaken hall to sit around and make small talk with the uptight muckety-mucks that ran the local government with eating food. Lots of food. Too much food. Nevev took her job as the ship's medical officer very seriously, not that anyone else seemed to appreciate her efforts, and nothing made her job harder than spreads of delectable cuisine. The fact of the matter was that her crew was a horrifying mix of species that treated dietary restrictions more like dietary suggestions. And one day they were all going to keel over and die because they refused to listen to her. There was an official IC code that covertly conveyed that food was a danger, but Nevev had quickly thrown it aside and resorted to repeatedly pinging the idiot who was about to die an ignominious death through anaphylactic shock until they finally relented and put the offending item down. Neural patches were a technological wonder. She could yell at any one of her moronic charges without even having to open her mouth, and their gracious hosts were none the wiser. Not that they listened, of course, except for Giron. They were a darling. Giron, a prime example of the reptilian Roshank species with their intricately weaved head spines and gracefully folded vestigial wings, was mainly carnivorous, and as such was sticking to the meats provided, think toth, and genteelly passed over foods when Nevev pinged them. You would think they were used to being subjected to alien cuisine with how well they were doing. Nevev loved them. Everyone else, however... Captain Saren, as a Tierson, was completely carnivorous by nature. The gray-skinned, gargoyle-esque fool was physically incapable of digesting a piece of fruit even if his life depended on it. And yet Nevev watched with a gimlet eye as he politely nibbled on a bright purple peach-looking thing, as he nodded along to whatever the Prime Minister was saying about trade routes and the possible pitfalls of integrating with the Intergalactic Coalition. Without the minutest change in expression, he gracefully swept her notifications aside and pinged her back just once. A notification without a single iota of data included. It felt a little like a threat. Nevev stopped bugging him, but vowed to ream him out when he inevitably showed up in her medbay with indigestion. On the other hand, Karst, the spotted four-armed menace herself, was Mrut, a species that was omnivorous but acutely allergic to anything containing the compound NaCl, as it was not naturally abundant on their planet. She, of course, didn't seem to care, and would eat anything set before her with reckless abandon, claiming that it just made her mouth a little fuzzy. Having scanned the entire table and catalogued every piece of food, Nevev watched in horror as she consumed perhaps the saltiest item present with undisguised relish. No amount of pinging could get her to stop. She even gave Nevev a thumbs up with her single unoccupied hand while piling her plate high and stuffing her mouth with the other three. Nevev was going to stuff her into the engine when they got back to the ship. She'd at least die surrounded by what she loved. Tesro should have been able to eat anything on the table, but through a quirk of genetics was actually deathly allergic to whatever they'd marinated the grand roast in. Nevev had made this painfully clear before they had sat down, but the Kiltaran kept eyeing the admittedly delectable-looking cuts of meat stacked in the center of the table, and flicking the tip of his tufted lilac tail back and forth in a way that made Nevev ping at him every 5 minutes. It felt like she was flicking a misbehaving toadlet on the back of their head. Wasn't he supposed to be a professional? Did he want to die? If he ended this night by needing to be drowned in a deluge of antihistamines, she was going to shave off his stupid mohawk and laugh as he bumbled his way through life without extrasensory input until it grew back. It wouldn't kill him. Probably. Jusa, bless her vaguely terrifying little Bezlur heart, didn't exactly have a normal mouth, and therefore couldn't eat much of anything except what she could suck the juices out of. Watching a Bezlur eat was often off-putting, as their entire face cracked open and their pincer proboscis emerged to stab into whatever they were consuming, but at least she wasn't trying to jam. Was that bread? Was she really trying to figure out how to eat a dinner roll right now? With what teeth, Jusa? Jusa's eyes flickered guiltily to Nevev before she could even ping her, and she sheepishly retracted her pincers and placed the roll on Tesro's plate instead. Telepaths! The worst one of the lot, though, was Charles Marrow himself. Not in the least because the stupid little man wouldn't allow her to run a full diagnostic of his genome, but because he seemed to think that if something didn't kill him, it was fine to keep eating it. Moron! Imbecile! Nevev knew for a fact that if he ate anything with nitrogen in it, he'd get a wicked migraine. And yet there he was, politely polishing off a green quasi-plum chock full of nitrogen because one of their hosts had recommended it and he was too well-mannered to turn it down. Nevev was sitting directly next to him and turned fully in her seat to glare at him head-on and ping him several times in a row. He squinted the eye closest to her, like she was a spiteful beacon of light stabbing into his retina, but stubbornly took another bite. At least he'd listened to her earlier and skipped over the seaweed side dish that was arsenic-based. Ugh, humans. Medical nightmares, all of them. We're combining genomes with other species, they said. It's basic science, they said. No, it wasn't. It was a horrible accident waiting to happen. Marrow looked like your average human, but there was no telling if one of his ancestors had gotten friendly with a mrut, and so he was actually allergic to salt. Or that perhaps his digestive tract was designed to be more herbivorous than he knew, and he wouldn't let her run any tests to make sure he didn't accidentally kill himself. It was maddening. He was going to perish from genome-related idiocy. Nevev moodily stirred her soup and continued her vigil. Why couldn't they just be like her? By Toth, she was a 7-foot-tall amphibian with great googly eyes and an undying craving for all things crunchy and fried, and you didn't see her try to take a bite of those delicious-smelling and yet hextarian-unfriendly roasted insects down the way, now did you? She had self-control, thank you very much. If they got out of here without causing a diplomatic incident, it would be a miracle. Okay, so I really liked this prompt. It opened up a lot of options for, shenanigans, and I'm a real fan of shenanigans. It made me think about allergies, because generally when you don't want to eat something, it's because you're allergic, at least in my experience. And then why allergies happen. And then I got onto alien allergies, because I was, feeling alien biology that week. And I happened to be in possession of a cast of aliens to inflict allergies upon. You just met them. I hope you liked them. Nevev is the saltiest person on the face of this earth, and I love her. This is a piece out of what I call the IC, or the Intergalactic Coalition. It's one of my heavier world-building pieces, so I kind of threw a lot of stuff in there that you maybe don't know about. So I'm going to give you a couple of fun facts, because I think these are cool. So, first of all, the chips that Nevev was talking about, they're like a really fancy HUD, cell phone thing. They go into wherever your occipital lobe is, basically. In humans, that's the back of their head, right? And it interfaces with your occipital lobe, which is the part of your brain that interprets what your eyes see. So they interface with magnetic waves, and then it makes you see the screen in front of your eyes without an actual screen. And then it receives your thoughts as input commands to do whatever things that you need to do. So it's like a really, really fancy Bluetooth earpiece, except for it can read your mind, and you don't need a phone screen to use it. Nevev's is special. It has a medical extension that allows her to interpret scanner readouts from sensors she has implanted on her hands, which is why she is keenly aware of all the allergens that are on the table and really, really mad about it, because she checked all the food and told them what not to do, and they did it. This universe is It actually kind of started off as like a Star Trek fic because I was bored one day and I was like, I want to mess around in the Star Trek universe. These characters have no bearing on the actual characters from Star Trek. I was just messing around in the universe. And it, like, metastasized, so it's definitely no longer a Star Trek fic. It is its own problem now. Which I think is, a fun thing about fic when you write it, and you write it weird enough that you're like, I'm not even in the universe anymore. I should just go write a book. If that ever happens to you, just go write a book. Other fun thing that Nevev kind of touched on in that piece that I think, at least I get a kick out of it, hopefully you do, is that in this universe, humans are kind of genetically, we're going to call them magical, because what they do is actually garbage. I know it. I'm in charge, so I make the rules. You can't stop me. So if it makes you feel better, you can pretend that all the aliens have a common ancestor like in Star Trek, but I'm here to tell you that they don't. Humans are just big old freaks in multiple ways. So they can reproduce with any other species that has reproducing in that kind of way. Ta-da! It's a mess. This happened because I was wondering why the human gene pool in Star Trek stayed so, pristine and, mostly human, when it was, pretty established that any human can go off and, have children with any other alien they can find, pretty much. So now there's a genetic crisis happening with humanity, and there's, 10% pure humans left in the universe, and there's a whole bunch of drama that you don't get here. But I figured you should know about it, because it's fun. But I've got a couple other Scorches in this universe. I don't think all of them won, but at least one more did. 232B is also part of this, so you'll get to hear me record it. And, let's see, I think that's all for that. My prompt for the next week, I think next Saturday is when it lands. No, next Saturday, is please stop believing in me at your earliest convenience. Thank you. That's the prompt because I thought it was funny. That's pretty much it. And I think that Bones won that one, so that'll be exciting. I'm excited to listen to that one, actually. I really like it. If you've got any questions for me about my weird expanded universe, feel free to hit me up in any of the comic sessions that we have. There are a lot of them. I'll maybe find it eventually. Quick reminder that our Patreon is up. It's super cool. And if you subscribe to our Patreon, you get to read all the Losing Scorches as well. And eventually we'll have them recorded up there too. But currently it's just reading. I don't think I have anything else going on to tell you guys about, but as soon as I do, I will keep you updated. Keep that fire burning.
The Cellblock Scorch is a production of Stellacore, an independent group of nerds sharing their obsessions with the world. We can be reached at thestellacore@gmail.com through comments on your podcast platform of choice, our Instagram, Stella_core, and at our YouTube, also called Stellacore. Feel free to check out our other productions on our YouTube channel, our cosplays on Instagram, or if you would like to support our creative endeavors, check out our Patreon or donate to the Ko-Fi of the writer of your favorite Scorches.